All right, so you probably can't see me on the camera. This is Erika's husband, Ron Ward, and I'm
Ron, why don't you step and show
conducting
yourself?
the interview with the Knight children. And one of the reasons I want to do this, so maybe to start out, today's June, for posterity, it's June 2nd, 2022. We're at the Marriott Residence Inn in Fort Smith, Arkansas, doing a little family reunion. And as we were planning for this reunion, I decided I wanted to get a little time interviewing these beautiful people, the children of William Thomas Knight. He passed away before any of my children were born, before any of their children were born. And so one of the reasons I want to interview them is a way to kind of introduce my children and others who love the man to him and understand a little bit more about him and his life. So with that, I'm going to start by asking, I'm going to get off the camera, and I have a list of questions we're just going to run through. And the first one was just, maybe Erika, you can start off. Tell us about...
I think Joseph can start this one.
Okay, what was Grandpa, I'll call him Grandpa Knight, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, what was Grandpa Knight's childhood like that you know of?
Okay, I know that his mother was 16 when he was born.
Just barely, right?
Yes.
Like
Like
5
she
days.
turned 16 like 2 days before he was born. And his father had a hard time holding a job down. He was a wonderful musician, but he was not a great family person. And so Grandpa Knight lived with his grandmother's family, his mother's family, so that she could work. And in those days it was hard for transportation, so she had to live in town to work. And they lived in the country, so he lived with a bunch of cousins, and they took advantage of him.
They were in Virginia, right?
Yes, in Virginia, and Fluvanna County,
Fluvanna
Virginia.
County.
Yes, at the house that they lived in is now a gas station. Or I guess it's a storage. It was a gas station when we were young, but now it's like a storage. It's like the office for a storage unit.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have enough food. We were talking earlier about our family's love for milk. And when he was a kid, he wanted, his body didn't have what it needed. And one time they bought a jug of milk and he drank the whole thing. And he knew that he was going to be beaten for it. But he told us, he said it was worth it. That's what he wanted. And so, we were thinking about, at breakfast this morning, all the kids were chugging milk. And we were like, you know what, this is an appropriate thing.
Chocolate and plain milk.
Yes.
He loved both.
Yes, and when he was in 5th grade, we call his father's sister, Lucy Ann Pittman Knight Kirby, we called her Tweedles. And Tweedles always took a big interest in him. And she would get him when she could away from the others. And she told me when I was little that she'd buy him clothes, and next time he'd come, he wouldn't have any clothes. So she figured out she had to buy all of the cousins' clothes so that they'd let him have something that was suitable to wear. And so she was sort of like another mother to him.
She was really generous.
Yes.
She loved him.
Very loving.
Yes.
He was hers. I mean, that was the only child that she didn't have
She
any
was
other kids.
related to him through his
Well, he was
father.
father's
Maternal
older
aunt.
sister, and she didn't have any biological children.
Right.
Yes.
And you may or may not remember. Do you remember what year was he born?
1948.
Okay.
And he passed away in 1995.
1985. Yeah. You guys want to add anything about his childhood?
The only thing that I can take off where he left.
Take off where he left
where
off.
he left off.
Okay.
When he got really close to Grandma Tweedles, and she sent him to Miller School of Albemarle. It was a boarding school, like a military school, and he made a lot of really good friends there that he stayed friends with throughout his life, and they used to like to go drag racing together. He loved fast cars when he turned 16. And he was, I looked at his yearbook, he was the student body president at Miller School, which is kind of cool.
That's online.
Yeah.
Carrington now found it.
Yeah.
And I just
So
want
he
to
was a
add
pretty
there
cool
with
dude.
that is that he gave out apples, and he felt like that was part of his victory when he was running for president.
I never talked to him about it.
Yeah, he was. He knew a lot of people throughout his childhood, and he stayed lifelong friends with them. He was very personable, and his childhood friends stuck by him all the way.
Miller
until the
School
end.
in Virginia, near
It's in Albemarle County.
Albemarle. Okay,
Yeah.
you said that.
Rosette.
And he was born at Martha Jefferson Hospital in Charlottesville.
Oh, I don't know.
I think
I
so.
think he was born in Charlottesville. And
Yeah, and he, when his parents were married, they went to Reading, Pennsylvania, and then his mother left, and then came back to Virginia and brought him.
Just him without the dad. Yeah.
Yeah, him and his little brother Greg.
Mhm. Okay. So, yeah. Do you remember any stories that he told you about his childhood? But I guess we already covered that.
He told me once that I don't remember this. Maybe you guys can fill in. There was some story about him, like this might be too embarrassing. They were wondering if a fart would burn, and he lit it on fire.
It was someone else.
It was someone else, and there was some story about like burning something in a field or something. They're a little bit
They
pyromaniacs.
caught a field on fire.
Yeah, that's what
and
I-
burned a bunch of stuff
yeah.
down.
So he was a prankster, but not like a sinister.
They just like he was a
Prankster.
boy. He liked to have fun.
Yeah.
Good old boy.
And Larry and Lacey would beat him up all the time.
That was his brothers.
Those were his
And they were
cousins.
Cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah, his uncles.
They were his uncles, but
Right.
they were
About the same age.
They
A couple
were
years
about
older.
1 year older. Or something.
Right.
Yeah, and they were twins.
They looked just like him.
And so
But
he
their
figured
personalities.
out if he could pit them against each other, they'd leave him alone and not beat him up.
Okay.
So
Smart.
yeah.
All right. Well, if you remember any more, we can bring back later. But another question was stories that you remember from your childhood that he had a part in. So, like an experience you had with him when you were a kid that maybe brought you closer to him, or
I have a
where you
lot.
had
Okay,
fun
go
with him.
ahead.
Okay, so my birthday's in the summer, and I didn't. So we always had summer break, and I didn't really get to have a lot of birthday parties because school kids would have like invite the class for their birthday or whatever, and being a summer birthday, your birthday kind of gets skipped a little bit. Probably same with Eleanor having Thanksgiving birthday. But one day I was talking to him when I was in 4th grade, and I was like, Dad, sometimes I just wish that I could have a birthday that wasn't in the summer so I could have a birthday party and I could have friends come. And so Dad was like, okay, let's set that up. And so we celebrated my 9.5 birthday party. And he really went out of his way, I think, because our family was under a lot of pressure right then. It was Mom's last year of law school, and he was working full time and teaching, and he was coaching track and wrestling, and there was just a lot going on. But I think he took the day off from work that day, and he had a van with a mattress in the back, and he came up to North Elementary School, picked up all the girls in my class, took us to...
So a man came to an elementary school with a van and picked up a bunch of girls. Okay, got
he was the coolest guy ever.
it. Right.
And we went to a botanical garden, and he was so funny. He would sing these songs like I tell you something, and he would like find these little seeds and like throw them at us, and we'd run around the garden. He just was really fun. He was really playful. And then he took us to a couple other places. He took us out for ice cream, and he got all the kids plates of ice cream at this ice cream parlor. But he got me this huge bowl, like full of ice cream scoops.
I remember that place.
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty fun. And then we didn't live in like the fanciest house, but I really wanted to have a slumber party, and Dad made it really cool because we had this camper in the yard, and all the girls brought their sleeping bags, and we all slept in the camper.
It was a pop-up camper.
And it was the best birthday
Not bad.
ever. Like, he just made it really fun and really special, and everybody really had fun, and it just made me feel really loved.
He had a little nickname for you too, right? When you were little.
Doodles.
Doodle.
Yeah.
Doodlebug. Yeah.
Do you have more?
Oh, you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a bunch. I don't want to just all be me talking.
So that was
Okay.
when you were in West Virginia?
Yeah, that was when I was in 4th grade in West Virginia. Another one from West Virginia was when the summer that I was 7, turning 8. So I turned 8 at the end of the summer. This is almost 8. That June, after school got out, Eleanor and Joseph were in daycare, And Mom had something going on in Morgantown, so Dad put me, a 7-year-old, on the back of his motorcycle with no bag or anything. I was a cool dudette.
Helmet.
And a helmet. He put a good big helmet on me. And he took me to Charlottesville on his motorcycle. It was a 5-hour drive for the whole summer. But Grandma Tweedle set us up. I didn't need to bring a bag because she hooked us up with everything we needed. And we were just buddies.
Did you stay downstairs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a really fun summer. I got to be really, really spoiled by Tweedles.
Where were they?
They were in daycare
Okay.
with Mom up in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Nice.
So anyway, I felt pretty cool. But I'm not really into motorcycles now because those are some pretty long rides. And some other memories I
You
have.
might get to ride on one in a couple weeks, though.
With our son Thomas loved motorcycles, and he never met me, Thomas Knight, the first.
All right, ask him to take you on a 5-hour drive.
I also remember that Dad would dance with me, and I put my feet on his feet, and he would dance, and I would just walk on his feet. And the funnest thing and he would sometimes, like, this is from my early childhood up to when we had church dances. Sometimes we would have daddy-daughter dances. And my friends would be kind of jealous because he would hold my hands and he would say, okay, jump 3 times. And he was really tall. And he would fly me up all the way, like, 180 degrees. And all my friends were like, I want to dance with him because he would fly you.
That was very fun.
It was really, really fun.
Cool.
And I have a lot of really happy memories as a teenager. Driving, we loved to go cruising in his cars. He had a really smoky BMW with leather seats.
He loved that car.
And we would go cruising around, had a really good stereo system. We always listened to either the Cars or Milli Vanilli.
And he'd call that hard hitting if it was a really good song.
Yeah.
It's a hard-hitting song.
Sometimes he'd have his finger dance like this when it was hard hitting.
But we would just go cruising and we would look at houses. And this started in my early childhood. When we lived in West Virginia, we would go look at campers. We'd go to lots and just like tour all the campers, and it was so fun. And then in Charlottesville, he knew he wanted to get some rental properties. And so we went looking at some really cool old houses that were divided up into apartments and stuff. And we just did a lot of talking about houses. And I think he's part of the reason that I had such a love for houses, because he could fix anything. And he let me, when he did buy duplexes, he let me help out with it. Sometimes I would go collect the rent. And he kind of taught me that business. And I got into that later a little bit.
Awesome.
You guys have some?
Yeah, I remember I had a hard time keeping my room clean. I would go from room to room.
I think you had like
messes.
2 bedrooms and living room once.
Yeah, once I did, and
Well, nomadic.
nomadic. And once Grandpa Knight said, I'll tell you Miller School stories while you clean your room. How does that sound? He had the best Miller School stories. He would tell about how he had a car hidden. Because they weren't allowed to drive. He had a car hidden. He was on cross country, so he could rent to that car, go places,
And come back.
And I think there was a lake there. And he said,
And he had friends that would,
Oh, they help each other out big time.
they'd like fold a bed and make it look like he was asleep for the bed call.
he had friends
Put a
that
little,
hooked each other up.
rumble up the blankets a little or something.
Yes, they
yeah.
would figure it out how to not get him caught.
But with the friends, things weren't always peaceful, because I remember him asking his friend Miles if he wanted to go swimming. They went skinny dipping, and Dad stole Miles' clothes. So Miles was in a fix when he got out.
They always did stuff like they did all.
Always.
They always.
There was
I cannot
life.
imagine a boys' school, how many pranks they've
Oh yeah,
done on each other.
there must have been so many pranks. And I
I'll share
remember.
some later with Uncle Greg's pranks he did.
Okay, we definitely need some of that in there. And yeah, I remember being very small and him telling a story about the bus, and he said, I can't tell you this story till you're 16. So we won't tell that one. But I don't remember the full details, but I think a picture was drawn on the bus. I remember the story of that. I think he vividly remembered that story. But
Did the room get cleaned?
the room got cleaned.
Eventually.
Because very
Yeah.
entertaining stories.
Very entertaining
you
stories
tell
made it a pleasure to do so, and that's a very fond memory I have. And I remember after he died, someone asked me, "How did you know that your dad loved you?" And I thought back to sometimes kids can get bored in church, and
Correct.
he would take his briefcase, which was full of candy for the kids that he taught, but on top he'd put the church program, and we would draw comics, and we would label draw Mom, draw Erika, Joseph, family members, Grandma Tweedles, and there would be hilarious drawings we'd draw with family members, and it was usually in rat form. We had what was called a rattly hood.
Joseph was Ratley.
Okay, so Joseph is pack rat. Erica is very mathematical, so she's the lab rat, very happy
And
to
I was
be
the first child too, so experimental.
Experimental.
lab rat, like loves the science. And I was vegetarian a lot, so I was field rat. And Grandma was kangaroo rat because she's got long legs. And was Tweppers a rat?
I don't know. I don't remember.
And this rattly hood has just stretched on through college. My college roommates were rats. This is something you do to swipe a neck, and this is a fork. And they're just all kinds of hilarious
That's how
things.
you show love to the rat.
That's how you show love, or get sneaky. You're not supposed to protect your neck. So you'd say, hey, Joseph, look at that field over there. And Joseph looks, but he protects himself. That's just how Dad would have done. And my elbow went down. It's like, don't mess with the neck. That's exactly how it would go. Joseph's ready, but I'm still going to
That started as a way to keep you sitting still in church.
Well,
Yeah, it was
what
just
we
like
do,
fun.
we always had games
it was
to do.
so much fun to draw rats in church. And then we had our whole
It'd be
rat.
like I guess we'd sort of pick fun at each other in the comics. So Grandma would like to throw things down the steps rather than.
And rather than go down to the laundry room, chuck that laundry down the steps.
So we might like draw like a picture of her like with like Erica's chair from the
Being
room and like
thrown
throwing it down the steps.
A truck going thrown down.
Yeah.
That's what we would draw. Things like that.
Yeah.
These were hilarious, and it made church go by very beautifully. We could still hear the speaker because we were doing these drawings, but it was fun to, he had this leather briefcase that would pop open with a code.
Yeah, how to
Brass
keep you guys
pieces.
from taking the candy.
Yeah, that's right.
His
He was
code.
generous with the candy, and he would bring us on drives where we would pick out our favorite soda from the 7-Elevens or the convenience stores or candy, and they had 1-cent candy, and he would just take an armful of it and put it in this briefcase. And he was generous with it. It was fun, like Eric.
All right, battery replacement. So, Eleanor, you were in the middle of the story, so keep going.
So I was telling about the rattly hood, and there was a code that you would call to the rats if you were in trouble, because rats would kind of wrestle and pick with each other where they couldn't get out, and so they knew they could call. They would say friendly, and then I think the rat would say meow, 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 and come running. And I had some shoes that Dad had gotten me called suede 1-star all-star shoes, and I felt like I had an extra pep. So I had on my 1-star or all-star.
How old were you?
I was a good solid teenager. I mean, I was up there in the teens.
15 or something?
I'd say I was probably around 15, or if not older. And I heard far in the corner of the basement, friendly. I came running to help. I could tell Joseph was in distress. And it was just kind of fun to get to call friendly and see someone running to help you, because
And our dad, he was like 6'5", like 275 pounds. He's like really big and strong.
So he was wrestling on Joe's bed, and he was getting pinned down, and he knew if he called friendly, and I had on my shoes that I could do anything. So basically he would lift off, and I came flying into the room, airborne, and landed on top to help.
You jumped.
I jumped. I mean, it was like, ah, and the bed cracked. All three of us were on this antique Grandma Tweedle's bed. Oh, and Dad didn't say anything. He got this black wooden board on the maroon wood, fixed that, and it's still there today. So it's kind of fun to see that board after that. And I also wanted to say that Dad loved to help with science fair projects. And I remember someone won
Joseph won
battery
first place.
orange juice.
And, like,
It was Joseph.
Yes.
Tell us about that. It was like that whole region, right?
Yes.
Dude.
Yes. It was. We got different antacids and checked out how much the acid level in each antacid and how effective they were. And we read it with a voltmeter. So it was when I went to Piedmont Community College, and it won the region there.
It was really neat to see the orange juice and the wires, and Dad loved
Yes.
being able to work together. And I remember I wanted to test how strong hair is. So I got a sample of 50 hairs from the high schoolers at Charlottesville High School. Said, Dad, I would like to try the force of hair to see, different factors on how strong hair is.
Mine too.
Yeah. Oh, you did have strength of hair too? And Dad was really grossed out by the hair sample. He said, some of these look like hair from strange places. He was grossed out. But he was joking, and he really helped. And he had a love for science, and he really loved learning. He would read war encyclopedias, and I think that sparked some of my love of reading, is to see how much if he could read a war encyclopedia, I could read other things, But he would read them like novels, which was really inspiring to see.
Oh man, does we talk about Pinewood Derbies too?
Okay. I guess I'll start with Pinewood Derbies. And I went to Cub Scouts when I was 8 through the age of 11, and Pinewood Derbies is something that Cub Scouts do. And there's like a little wooden car that's like a little block about like this, and it comes in a kit with a wooden block, 4 nails and 4 wheels. And so the first year, Grandpa Knight and I built a car, and he didn't like, I think some leaders of the troop had the track to practice with. So he decided that we were going to buy 5 kits the next year, and he borrowed the track from the church. And so it's back to the science experiment things, and he figured out where to put the weight in the car and how to, sand different places on the car to make it really fast. So we ended up winning our troop the next year, and we went to a regional tournament. And so he's able to talk to the people there. And the next year, I think I was in the top echelon. Of course, it was Grandpa Knight doing it. And so,
Him plus
But
cars.
he had this really beautiful design where it was a silver car. Every year there was silver. And he had body. It was very aerodynamic. It would win that prize.
yeah, the block started off like that, and then it went down to very.
Yes,
all
it was
the way
like
in
a
the back.
sliver. And
It was right in
just
front of
looked
the
stellar.
rear axle.
And he had graphite. He 7 wheels, and he had a lot of touches.
All the tricks.
All the tricks.
And
he
this is
pulled
before
out.
internet, where you can just look up everything. So he had to do a lot of
Yeah,
figuring.
You have to
research.
do it from scratch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, since you always won that so many times, the church asked him to help the kids with single moms so they could win too, because they didn't have a dad to help them.
Mhm.
So he was really sweet about that. He
Yes.
helped the kids with single moms.
Yes. And another story that pops out to me is when I was about 10, he got me an air rifle for Christmas. And there are these little pellets. The BB's easier to shoot, but pellets seem like they're just stronger. So I automatically put a pellet in, and I think I got it stuck sideways or something, and it wouldn't shoot. And so he said, "We'll just put this down." And I was just so excited, and I wanted to handle it. So when everyone was gone, I picked it up and aimed right into the mirror. And I was like, "There's an ugly guy there." So I pulled the trigger, and it went boom and shattered this like antique mirror that
Grandma Tweedles.
Tweedles put it together when she owned a framing shop. And
You cried. You just felt so bad.
yeah, but he said, "What did you get?" There was no anger or anything. And
You got something.
yes, he got some. Yes, and I never did anything like that ever again.
Yeah. All right, so we might come back as you think of more cool stories like that. But here's another prompt for you to talk about. What lessons did he try to teach you? So, Erika, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, he taught me some creative ways to stay in shape when having little kids. I used to love to, in the morning, run into his room, and he would put me on his ankles and lift me up, for a core workout, and also just for fun. And I was like
He was
riding.
laying in bed.
Yeah,
and
he was on his
put
back
feet
and
up.
had me on his ankles.
Yeah.
And
He didn't like laying on couches as much, and he'd lay on the floor.
Yeah.
And so he was always like, if he was in the living room, he'd lay on his back. So
And
we'd
prop you
jump
up on
on
his
him.
feet.
in
Yeah,
those
and he
situations.
would hold me by my ankles, and I would get really stiff, and he would lift me as his weight, standing up by my ankles on his
Yeah,
back.
it was like all fours, like for babies and toddlers. He'd grab their ankles and arms, and it was like a Ferris wheel.
That was another
Yes,
one.
and I
I also
remember him
lifted
lifting us
one
on a
standing
broomstick.
straight up. Yeah. Yeah.
Broomstick, us on the broomstick.
Yeah, so he had a whole bunch of those fun, like where we were the weights. And then
And in the pool.
Yeah.
We would ride him like he would be a dolphin. And
Totally.
it was just
I
major
have
freedom.
some
Just
pictures
go
of
on.
Joseph riding on his belly. Dad was on his back
Oh,
in a
yes.
river. There's a
Yeah.
really cute
Those are
picture.
beautiful pictures.
Yes.
And there was a really generous time when he was a track coach, and he was starting to put on a little weight. And he was trying to stay in shape, and so he would go running. And I just really wanted to have a little more time with him. I was a latchkey kid, and I think sometimes I just felt a little lonesome, like just wanted to have a little more time. And so I was like, even though my legs were like half the length of his legs, I was like, can I please go running with you? And so he was really generous and sweet. He's like, of course you can go running with me. Like, I was his equal. And so I put on my running shoes, and I was just running as fast as I could. And he zigzagged the whole road so that I could go with him and we could both work out together. So he...
And to go along with that, I
Yeah.
remember him, he was trying to get in better shape, and he would run home from school. He taught shop in West Virginia, and he was track coach and wrestling coach, and I think he was trying to be a good example to the kids. So he would run home, and he looked so sweaty. Like, he didn't let the difficulty of the run stop him from doing it.
yeah,
He was
pushed-
red
he
and
pushed it.
just buckets of sweat coming, but a huge smile.
Yeah. He
He had
also...
a phrase called "get mean with it." Yes, and so if you had to dig down deep,
Yeah.
He would dig down deep,
he
and
was like, "Get mean with it." Like
The
if
eye
you
of the
were,
tiger. Yeah.
yeah, like if you were working outside and the ground was hard, he was like, "Just get mean with
get
it.
mean with it.
Get,
Just
get
dig
mean
deep.
with that shovel."
And this is not necessarily the best transition, but some people thought he was a rough basketball player, but he loved playing church basketball. The shirt came
That was
off,
his
the
best
body
workout.
got greased down. People would just bounce right off
He
of
was
him.
so tall.
He was so tall. Well, he was just sweating. I mean, it was just pure body sweat. Somebody would slide right off of him and make the basket. And I love sitting on the stage and watching.
Watching it,
And later
yeah.
I'd do that and watch Paul watch. I'd watch Paul play because I just remember getting to cheer on Dad.
He's
Very
really good.
entertaining.
He's really good at it.
Really, he's very, very good at it. I think he'd like to play with Uncle Greg and sort of have a brothers team
Brawl.
play.
No,
Where
they were bros. They were brothers.
he wrote, and there was a lot of this stuff on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uncle Greg would always elbow.
Elbow
Yeah.
thing.
Hey, bro.
Hey, bro, you get me, bro? Bro, hey, bro.
Well, Uncle Greg always had his big muscle arms.
He couldn't fit in the door. We're teasing you, Uncle Greg, if you're watching this.
I did finish a few more lessons though that kind of go with this. My dad taught me how to stay hydrated. He always had
Yes.
nice big gulps. The biggest cup you could get at the gas station. He was friends with all the gas station workers. Sometimes he got free donuts.
Is there a drink you like to get, like Gatorade or?
Just whatever.
Mountain Dew.
Usually, like he
Mountain
would
Dew.
try to get like diet sodas.
Yeah, stay in
Because
shape.
he thought that if he drank diet sodas, that would make him lose weight.
Yeah, slim down.
And then he tried to get healthier. He decided to get healthier, so he switched to quarts of chocolate milk. And the funny thing is, in his car, when he finished it, he would squeeze it and throw it on the floor. And that was one of the saddest things after he died. Nobody wanted to throw those away. We wanted to leave that pile of
With his
chocolate
little
milk
hand
curtains.
scrunch.
Yeah, it was
You
just-
missed a very important detail
please fill in.
on the gulps.
Yes.
You had to fill it up and then chug as much as you could,
And then fill it up.
and then fill it up again.
Fill it up again.
Top it off.
I didn't know about that.
Gotta fill 2 mugs, not one.
Yes.
So after a basketball game, you could almost chug the whole thing
Oh,
and
yes.
then fill it up again.
Hydration.
He taught us to not take life too seriously.
Yes.
He always was ready to play a practical joke or just be funny. I remember once he had this weird I had like a marshmallow gun and also
Potato gun.
Potato
a
gun.
potato gun.
And it would explode
Yeah.
when you shot it.
Well, and he also had a potato.
Built
and-
out of a PVC pipe with a
Yes.
little engine on the back.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, I might be remembering this wrong, so Uncle Greg, if you're watching this, please correct me. But it seems like he stuck a potato in the exhaust pipe of Greg's car or something, so that when he started, it made a really loud sound.
Pops out.
Yeah. Like, there was something with the. It's kind of vague, but I just remember being really funny. I'm like, he is just.
He had a lot of fun, and he even made chores fun. When he had to mop the basement, he would have hard-hitting tunes, like Rolling Stones. He would just get that mop done. I mean, it seemed like it'd be hard for other people, but he made it look like he had a toothpick in his hands, and he would mop. But Erika wanted to tell a story about the mopping in the
Eleanor wants
basement.
to tell that story.
Well, the ladies were upstairs. Erica reminded me of it, and the boys were going to take care of cleaning the basement. And Erica tells us, I don't remember this when you tell it.
Okay, I can tell. So we were going to all clean the house together, and the girls were going to clean the upstairs, and the boys were going to clean the downstairs. And Dad turned on the hard-hitting tunes really loud from the basement.
He had a record player.
So Eleanor and I were
big
upstairs.
speakers.
We were cleaning away in the kitchen and everything, and it turns out that Joseph and Dad had snuck out the back door, left the tunes on, so we thought they were cleaning, and they went and got ice cream.
Erica wishes she was
I wanna
in
be
that
on the ice
basement
cream
cleaning duty that day.
Well, the next question I had was
Do you guys have any? I don't really.
other
Kind of,
lessons.
they
Oh,
have
other lessons. We have a lot of lessons. So,
Okay.
when I was growing up, I liked to have friends that sort of had some challenges. Maybe, many challenges. That's kind of friends that I had. Either they were very maybe timid or had physical challenges, and the parents were worried that I was going to marry someone that just needed me to watch out for them. And so, Grandpa Knight, and I guess they sat me down and said, I want you to choose someone who already has some rabbits in the basket.
He had that talk with me too.
I think he had that talk. And that means that they don't just say they're going to go to medical school. Because a lot of people talk, I'm going to do this, and then they realize it's very difficult to get in medical school, and there's a lot of talking going on. And that discussion just really made me think to choose a spouse carefully, and not just how many rabbits do they have in the basket, or, I think it was also about bragging without having anything to back it up, but to choose a spouse carefully. And I feel like I can say that we were extremely blessed after having the rabbits in the basket talk to
Well, we all married really, really well.
incredible
Yes.
spouses.
Yeah.
And I think that some of that wisdom and, a lot of the lessons he taught were how to treat people. When he passed away, the whole gym was full of every, race, social class. He didn't have boundaries that a lot of people have when it comes to things that are children of God. He cared about
everybody.
everyone. And he would play pranks. Like we had some fabric lizards. Do you remember where Jim Elkin's wife is from? Was it Thailand?
Thailand.
They looked like real lizards, and the people that worked for him for his contracting
Even
company,
the underside of them were white.
they had
So
a white belly, and they hung like a lizard. He would chase them, and they would scream. These were like full-grown men that, but it was very entertaining. But he had a very playful side. And I think a lesson that he taught us is don't take life so seriously that you can't enjoy it. Laugh and have fun when you have to do your work. And there's so many lessons. I'll let you guys tell some.
I just like the way he treated everyone. He was, I remember when he was a contractor and had an excavation business, there were many times that he would have an estimate on a job, and the job ended up being a lot easier for him than he thought it was going to be. And rather than just saying, "Oh, I'm going to take the extra money," he would say, "You know what? The job was worth about this much," and people were very happy.
He just dropped the price.
Yes.
Yeah. And he also taught us how to deal with bullies. There was someone that just terrified me at school. I still remember her name was Nicole. She was a very large girl, and she was very mean to me. And Dad said, let's get a tube and squeeze. We're going to put tuna juice, and he just listed every nasty thing you can imagine. We're going to squeeze that from her locker. And and you're just not going to have any problems with her.
He said right before Christmas break starts. You're
Right
gonna
before Christmas break.
throw this in.
I never heard this.
And he called it an enema too, but I think a turkey baster is what decided. But we never had to do it. Every time I saw Nicole, I thought that turkey baster full of tuna juice and molasses and nasty eggs, and rotten eggs. I didn't have any problem. All of a sudden, I was a little straighter, and I remember that very week, Nicole came by my table and said, "Eleanor, you want to buy my hot dog?" She had a big old hot dog. I don't know where she got it from. It was middle school day. She offered me to buy her hot dog. Everything changed just from me having a different perspective,
Mindset.
from Dad talking it out. And he didn't allow bullying to happen. If he heard anyone was having problems, he made sure we felt confident. And that has also passed through with the next generation. If our kids come and tell us that something's happened, we go and take care of it and help them and let them be heard.
In my first year of Boy Scout camp, I was 11, and there was like in the other ward had a troop too, and they were all really mean and like to pick on us, and I was really scrawny like Walker and awkward, and the first year I begged to come home, and he taught me. He said, if you make a commitment, you need to do it, and so he made me. He said, okay, I will come back with you the last 2 nights. So I think he had to take off work. And it just made all of the young men feel better that were my age because there was like an ultimate protector.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, if they do anything.
And he was that across the board.
And it was the same thing with Eleanor. He's like, you know what we could do? We could just grab them and throw them under the sprinkler thing. And it was just funny stuff like that. And I knew he could physically easily do it. So that made it like if he wanted to, it would have been something he could do. And it made those guys just feel like twerps. And so even when I became, like 16 or 17 and I'd see them, I was like, you know what? What was intimidating about them? All they are is they were just puffing their chests up and they weren't that tough.
And a lot of people can be exclusive, like they called themselves the Charlottesville Posse. And during seminary, they all went to breakfast, the Charlottesville Posse, and left 3 of us there to have seminary alone, and didn't tell us they were skipping seminary to go to breakfast. And I did say something to one of them about it, and I feel like he did the opposite of that in his life. He would never have left 3 people behind. Mm-hmm. I felt like I could handle that well, but I feel like the other 2 couldn't. That was extremely hurtful to them. And I feel like that by his example that we try to be more inclusive of people who are maybe different or aren't considered the popular crowd.
Yes.
Good lessons. All right, well.
But one of his greatest lessons, I think, is loving.
Yeah.
Just a pure love. I remember reading some letters that by the time I went to college, I didn't have the gift of getting to get letters from him, but I love reading the letters that he wrote to Erica.
Oh,
and he wrote something
letters
about shiny side and greasy side. Can you tell me what it says, Erica, just so we can remember? Keeping the shiny side. Some people have a hard time keeping the shiny side up and the greasy side down, but Erica, you do that. You keep the shiny side up. And,
Make the best of things.
Yes, make the best of things. And I love that he called it the shiny side and the greasy side. And some people, when he passed away, people told stories about him. They said that he made greasy pancakes, but we really liked his pancakes. That was one of his jobs, and we were going to talk about the jobs that he had. He had quite a variety.
Yes. Oh, good.
He flipped pancakes. He met Grandma Ruth when he was loading up potatoes. He worked at a gas station. And he was a wonderful teacher. I think he really loved his students. When he taught shop in Fluvanna, he would have barbecues, and they'd bring a couple grills in. He'd have the students bring things, and he knew how to make learning fun.
Murray Meats. That just hit me.
Yes.
He'd go pick up this meat company and have these big boxes of hamburgers and hot dogs, and he'd buy all kinds of them.
Oh, they're just hot dogs galore.
I forgot about that.
Yes, Murray Meats.
That was for like the whole
he'd do it for all the shop students, and then he'd pull everybody else in.
He was a really popular teacher.
He was.
Is it okay if I?
Yeah, and then contracted business too.
Oh, okay. Even the kids. I went to a different high school than where he taught. The kids at my school, when they found out I was Mr. Knight's daughter, I was a little bit cooler because they knew all about him. And one story I remember,
especially African American students.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, like everyone,
every
but
kid.
especially.
That's true.
But I remember once he was doing some kind of assembly at Fluvanna High School, and he played a prank on the school. The whole school. He said, "Oh man, it's snowing. School's canceled," and the whole school erupted in cheering and applause, and they were so excited. And then he started dancing and singing "Psych, Psych, Psych, Psych."
Oh, man.
And then he had on a scarf and a hat and singing the snow song, the Christmas snow song.
So he taught at high school level?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he was
taught
at college level at Piedmont Community College, Fluvanna High School, and he also taught middle school in West Virginia.
Yeah. And his dream was
So
to
that
have
was like his main job, it sounds like.
Well, that was his
being a
job
teacher.
For the
to get-
longest.
Well,
Yeah.
he got mom through law school and stuff. He always wanted to start a family business. That was always his dream. Right after he taught at Piedmont, he really wanted to start his own auto body business. And he was ready.
He did
Yeah.
have one.
Yeah, he was ready to buy like a commercial shop, but they decided to have mom go to law school instead, and that he would start a business later. So when I was in high school, he started Tom Knight Construction. He did the excavation part of the business, and then he had subcontractors do other things. And I want to share a little
For
story.
residential projects?
All kinds of
Everything.
things, yeah.
Okay.
And in the winter, he would push snow off parking lots and stuff.
What about pizza?
Okay, just I have one thing I really want to say about the contracting, the digging. You know how like there are little boys who love to see backhoes and stuff and like
Tall pit
diggers.
trucks.
There was like probably I think a 3-year-old boy that was just enamored with Dad's backhoe, just loved it, and Dad smiled at them and just appreciated this little kid just having so much fun watching this big yellow digger. And the mom came up and talked to him and said, "He's having his 3rd birthday. Could we hire you to bring your backhoe to his birthday party?" And my dad's like, "I'll do it for free." And so he just for free brought his backhoe to this little kid's birthday party,
And they all got to do the
they all got to,
controls.
he got to ride the shovel.
That'd be a dream.
Yeah,
birthday party.
it's really
Awesome.
fun. Yeah, so before he died, he did start his dream, and he also
And when it was snowing, he would allow us to be with him when he was plowing the snow. And when he was at a pizza place, he said,
Yeah, they came and begged. He was working somewhere
I know this
else.
story.
They were. He was pushing the snow. So, can you please come and get our drive? It was like the ice storm.
yes.
You were in Provo,
Okay, that's why I didn't know.
but it was like inches and inches of ice and slush in between, and then more ice. And he said, "Well, you need to call my kids and ask them what kind of pizza they want, and let them order their own." And
They
so
made the best
they called and
pizza
said,
we've ever
"Is this
had."
Tom Knight's children?" Like, what kind of pizza would you like? And we're like, what? And they're like, whatever you want, whatever
They
you can
hooked it
imagine, do it. And we had like that much cheese.
Just how Joseph likes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he set us up. Like, even at his job at Fluvanna High School, I remember he would come home with all these Nintendo games.
Oh,
Like the students
Donkey
would bring him
Kong,
all this
Nintendo.
stuff. Like we had
Buy it
every
for
game,
10 cents.
but the kids would just bring them to him, and he would give them to us. And he always had like Monticello cards and stuff, so you could go swimming.
With a
Like
Monticello pass?
Yeah, like the kids who lived at Lake Monticello were at his school,
Yeah.
and they just gave him. I don't know. He always would just set us up with a whole bunch of stuff.
Nice.
And he also always really wanted to have a property business. He would talk about like relatives and people he knew that would have like multiple rental properties. And for a long time, he was always like building up for that. And he finally got 6 half duplexes. And that was, and he took care of those and stuff. And I was sad to see those go when he died.
Uh-oh.
But
So that planted a seed for you to start one. Yeah.
Should I tell it story? Okay. Oh, it made me cry.
cry.
Okay. So, so this is like after Dad's dead. Just a few years ago, I was just kind of in a funk.
I'll be right back.
I was kind of feeling sorry for myself because my kids didn't get to meet my dad, and just sometimes things just in our family weren't how I wanted. There were some surprises and just some things that I wished were different. And so I knew that thoughts become things, and that when you control your thoughts, you manifest your life. That we're all sovereign creators, and so I decided just to close my eyes and imagine what my life would be like if my dad hadn't died so young, if he was still alive. And so I just lay down and I closed my eyes and imagined him playing with my kids, driving around in the shovel of his front end loader. I imagined him just being generous with everyone and having a good time, and I just imagined me helping him with the duplexes, and then I just felt better when I opened my eyes. I just felt like, yeah, life. That's how life is supposed to be. And so I just got this feeling, look on Zillow and see if there are any duplexes for sale. And there was one that had just come up that morning, and it was listed for $100,000 less than what the Zillow estimate was. And so I called my realtor friend and just went to see it, and it was really cool. And so I called Ron, and he got a speeding ticket coming over. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I think I want to buy this duplex." And it turns out the guy that owned it was about the same age that my dad would have been if my dad hadn't died, and he owned an excavation business just like my dad. And I was really excited about this duplex, and he let us know that if I wanted to, we could buy all the properties on that street. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can afford all that. But we figured out a way and he also they were in really bad shape, and so we basically just got them for the price of the land, honestly. They were, it was labor, it was a sweat equity how we got them. But anyways, I always feel my dad at the properties. We named our business Tom Knight Properties after my dad, and I feel like he's there. When he had his duplexes, one of his employees lived in one of the half duplexes, and one of this excavation company owners, seller guys, employees lived in one of his duplexes. And when I opened one of the closets, there was a can of paint that said antique white. And that's the color that my dad painted every single house we ever owned inside on the walls, the words antique white. And so I just really get this feeling, I just got this feeling, and I just kind of looked up and just said, thanks, Dad. This is just amazing. And we have renovated the houses ourselves, and there's a little hardware store that is really close by, maybe like half a mile or so away, and it's owned by this really sweet old lady that reminds me of Grandma Tweedles. She has a bun and everything, and it reminds me of Tweedles with her little framing shop. It makes me think of her, and she has her 2 adult twin sons who work there, and she always just asks me about my life, and I just feel really surrounded by love. And so I feel like my dad always had this dream, and I feel like he kind of brought the dream through me, because I kind of had the dream too, because we had that dream together. And it was just kind of cool that happened.
And even your kids help out.
Oh yeah, and also not only do I get to, I also get to work on the duplexes with someone named Thomas Knight Ward. My oldest son is named after my dad, and he's majoring in construction management. And so there is a Thomas Knight that I get to work on the duplexes with.
Oh.
Comes full circle.
Comes full circle, yeah. So, sorry. So
We were kind of on the topic of what jobs he had.
Yeah.
And
He did have an auto shop.
he had an auto shop? Okay. Auto body shop?
I don't know all the details.
No, just in our yard. It was just at our house. It wasn't public.
He was a partner with somebody.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was extra job he had.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say that he was called the Disneyland Dad because he would pick out the really big gifts for us, like bicycles, and made sure all of us had bikes, even if we just went up and down St. Charles Avenue with the teal 10-speed. He got, our mom would be sure to get the practical things. The books. Yeah, clothes, books. But I do remember that Mom and Dad went shopping to the mall one Christmas and picked out kind of fancy outfits. We usually got our clothes from Gabe's, tried to find the best deals. And Joseph followed up in Grandpa Knight's ways, and we each had $100 to get our school clothes. And they were great deals, so you could get a lot for $100 of nice things. And Joseph was eating kielbases and playing games in the lobby. And I think that he's not big on shopping.
No.
And Grandpa Knight loved the meats as well.
So,
we can do the funny stories.
we can either do funny stories or like what sayings or phrases he used.
Well, but we skip
Or
funny
both.
stories.
We skip funny stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a really funny story.
Let's go back to funny stories.
Okay, so I was in 6th grade, and we were all together. I don't know if y'all remember this, but the fair came to town with all those spinning racks.
Oh my.
Beef stew.
Beef stew.
I remember.
So Dad loves to eat these big beef stew.
Like chunky,
Chunky
Dinty Moore, whatever.
Yes, Dinty Moore. Yeah, the big one.
Thick
And so
gravy.
we were so excited to go to the fair with him. And so, So we get in the car and we go. And I got really dizzy, so I stayed off the ride, but he went all the scary stuff.
You have to tell what ride it is
I
when
know.
they spin around and your
So I
body's
was
like,
watching.
Scrambler. It's called the Scrambler.
So I was.
It is
I
Scrambler.
stayed off, and there was a lot of. Sorry,
A lot of people
there was a lot of people, and Dad was on the scrambler. It was
spinning around. Okay.
I can't say. And he threw up, and his throat was in
It's
his
just got the whole
big
line of people
Big
across.
stick.
It just came down through the air and went
And nobody knew who it was, right?
and you're just like, I don't know what.
I
And he got off the ride, he was like,
know.
He had a really bad gag reflex. There was Tweedles lived with us, and she had dementia. And there was a weekend that it was only him, myself, and Tweedles at the house. And so Tweedles had a bathroom accident where there was skid marks all the way across the bathroom. And he came out. He said, "You're gonna have to take care of that. I can't do it." And so I inherited the same gag reflex. So I don't know how the two of us got it done, but we did something.
And Tweedle's going.
Eleanor, okay, there was Tweedles lived in our house, and when she had dementia, she woke up in the middle of the night one night, and she put a big thing of vitamins on top of the stove, and she decided that she wanted to cook bacon after that. So she put a pound of bacon in the frying pan, and then decided to go back to bed. And so it caught our kitchen on fire, and
oh, he's doing it.
everyone was okay.
Well, there's a funny part of the story.
Oh, you can't. Go ahead, Erica.
Erica.
So this was so. Yeah, so this was the middle of the night, 3 o'clock, and I heard the fire alarm go off, and I was the only one on that level. You guys were sleeping in bedrooms downstairs. And so there was smoke in the hallway. I went in the kitchen, the cabinets were on fire. And so I opened the door to the basement, and I was like, "Mom, Dad, the cabinets are on fire!" And I'm just yelling, screaming. And
But you didn't say cabinets are on fire. You were screaming. I was upstairs. I'm like, no, she didn't scream fire. She was screaming.
well, I was
And he couldn't
saying,
hear fire.
the cabinets are on fire.
While screaming.
But while screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It sounded urgent.
It was.
Yeah.
It was such a scream.
I was saying the cabinets are on fire, but I was screaming. And he was
She
kind of
was screaming.
he
The
woke
cabinets
up.
are on fire. So it sounded like
And
a
he-
blood curdling
Yeah.
scream.
And so he came to the bottom of the stairs, and I didn't know he had a pistol like right at hand, but he had a pistol in one hand and he had a fire extinguisher in the other hand, and he was ready to rumble.
Ready to
And
get mean.
yeah,
That's what he
he
did.
ran up there, he grabbed the frying pan with something, and he threw it out in the snow.
Chucked it off the back
Yeah.
deck.
And then we called the fire department. We got the fire out of the cabinets, and he just stuck a microwave in.
Just where
He
that
covered
fire
up the
was,
burn
we got
mark.
a nice new microwave covered that burn mark. And I wanted Joseph to tell about Grandma Tweedles going.
We were leading into that because when he was concerned about her being in the kitchen without supervision after that, and so he liked being downstairs to be comfortable. And so if Tweedles was doing too much moving upstairs, he'd say, "Tweedles, stay out of the kitchen." and she had these slippers that she'd wear holes in, and it was like sandpaper and go whoosh, 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 whoosh. And it was like a nice rhythmatic. And sometimes she'd carry change in her hand and go like this, and some coins would fall. And then she would go mess with some cabinets and things. And so after a couple minutes of her in the kitchen, he'd be like, "Tweedles, you need to get out of the kitchen," because he didn't want another fire in the house.
Right.
So Eleanor, it's your turn here.
And so Joseph once put on the slippers.
Oh no.
To play a trick on Dad.
Took on Dad. Whoosh, whoosh, Flippers! And Joseph just didn't stop. And Dad came up the steps to make sure.
No,
What happened?
I acted like I was going down the steps. And then he jumped up and came
And
up.
then he jumped up when he thought she was coming down the steps and might fall. Oh, that's even better. He jumped up fast on that now.
Are we still on funny stories?
Go ahead, Erica.
Okay, so sometimes we have a ward road show. And there was this one year that Bishop Snow and Dad dressed up as these giant women.
Giant women?
Yeah.
And Bishop Snow was like this and this.
And he's like round.
They're
He's
big.
like round.
Yeah. So we were in these dresses,
And Dad's very masculine. Just to let the grandkids or whoever's watching, he's 6'5", looks like Superman.
He looked really funny
Extremely
in
strong.
dress.
He can move grand pianos and
Yeah.
just.
He
Strong.
looked really funny.
Yes,
It's like he
didn't
didn't
look.
lift up engine blocks and throw them in the back of trucks.
Yeah.
He didn't look like a woman.
This was a comedy.
Which made it all the funnier.
And so they were kind of just kind of making it up as they went, and both of them had really strong Southern accents, and they were just kind of making up the story a little bit, ad-libbing.
And both hams. So
Yeah, both funny. And Dad's like, get out the dough to Bishop Snow, and Bishop Snow was like, where is the dough? He's like looking around like the door because they were just on the stage at the church. And I just remember those guys are freaking hilarious.
So that was like a talent show?
It was like
Roadshow.
a word show or something,
Roadshow.
but they were ad-libbing and they hadn't like decided where the door was. I don't
Which
know.
was better than any kind of script. Those
Yeah.
two ad libs.
They were super funny.
You got any more funnies?
Let me see. I just made a list of my funnies. Where'd they go? Just the snow story. I already shared it with when you told Fluvanna that school was canceled and started dancing and singing like music.
And the kids love that.
Yeah, the kids love them. So yeah.
All right. Well, we touched on this, but you said that it's
Those
expressions
funnies.
like it's getting mean with it, and it's music is hard.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to tell one about, as a child, I couldn't see why Dad would want to take a snack and lay down on the couch and eat like this with his fork. Like I love seeing him eat like that with his fork, but I thought, I wonder why he doesn't want to eat at the table. Why does he want to lay down as an adult? I can see why he'd be totally exhausted and want to. And I remember he had certain things that he would make and bring a plate of, and one of them was a tuna salad, and it always looked really good to me. So we'd go over and say, hey, that looks good. And he'd say, you wouldn't like this, with a big smile, and he'd let us have some. Sometimes he would take what we had and just snatch it and take a bite of it and give it back. So you had to be fast. But I remember once I was walking in the University of Washington when I was a student there, and a university professor, I had a crate and barrel bag because there was a mall, and I had just gone shopping and I was going to do some of my work. The university professor said, oh, can I have some of that? He was just joking. And I said, you wouldn't like this. And I smiled and walked away. And I just channeled Dad. I'm sure the professor thought, I wonder what that
What
means.
the-
Yeah. But yeah, Dad
Sometimes
came
the
to
look
me.
on the face as he said it.
Yes, it was, yeah. the look
Oh,
on
you wouldn't
his
like
face.
any of this.
You wouldn't like any of this. And then he would definitely share. And I guess this is some of the funny stories that I just don't want to forget, is that Dad had certain creations that he made in the kitchen. One of them is called glue. So it's cream of mushroom soup, elbow, macaroni, hamburger, and peas. Peas wet and everything. And so, yeah, and he also made hot taco salad. And I still make hot taco salad to be able to celebrate him, especially around his birthday in August and at Valentine's Day when he passed away, to remember him. And it tastes extra good to me. I try to make hot salads in memory of him. And they would have, his taco salad would have Doritos, if anybody at the posterity wants to make it, chunks of cheddar cheese, iceberg lettuce, and he would fry up his hamburger and pour a jar of salsa in there.
Kidney beans.
And he had kidney beans to go in there. He would make sure the flavors melded and pour that over, and tomatoes were in there too. And he would eat it hot or cold, but first hot. And then if there were any leftovers, what there weren't, we made a big Tupperware bowl, and then he'd get that fork in there and
I catch myself repeating his sayings as a parent too. Some of them.
get your paws off my stuff.
Get your paws off my stuff.
Oh, I hear that one.
Let me taste your food to make sure it's not poisonous. And the other one, which I'm a little embarrassed to fit on video, but if y'all are watching this, you get to be the lucky ones to hear this story. Like when he would I don't want to say fart, when he would pass Southern Wind.
North and South and Back.
when he would fart, he would look really fast and he would say, "See that mouse go by? That rat go by on that Harley?" He would say there was a mouse on a motorcycle going by, and so I have been known to say that to my kids before.
I say that too. Right, going by on a Yamaha. And we just make up the
At our
letters.
house,
And I
they go
remember
on
I'd say
parades.
24XZ. He said, you know that's a real one?
A baby on the way.
We're back on. All right, on air.
Thank you
So-
to Robert for doing the camera work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I had
And he
another.
has a wonderful family.
He has a wonderful family.
Something else that Dad used to say was he like if there was like a really boring song coming on, he would go a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Rock of ages for me. And when we would drive through the country on those windy roads, people would hit skunks. They'd always sing Dead Skunk in the middle of the road,
Oh,
singing
Erika.
to Ha Ha Heavens. And I sing that to my kids too.
Let's hear it. There's a dead skunk in the middle of the road.
Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Sticking to Ha Ha Heavens. Pardon me, but that ain't no rose. Tilt your head and hold your nose.
Because there's a.
You got it. Yeah.
See the one? Did he also sing that song? You picked a fine time to leave me.
Lucille.
That was Grandpa Willie.
Oh, okay.
But I think he sang it too.
Yeah. Okay.
WW.
Can somebody sing a little bit of that?
Erica
I'm
can.
gonna sing that.
I don't remember how it goes.
You picked a fine time.
Yeah.
You took the time to leave me. Round to the keys.
7 hungry children.
And the cross in the
That's it.
field.
That just brings back my childhood.
Yep.
What comes after that?
We'll sing it. We'll play it after this.
Okay, that'll be our closing.
But there was some wrestling that he did, right? And he coached wrestling.
Yeah.
We skipped over that.
Yes, he would wrestle tassel, and that's also come through to the next generations. When I met
We're gonna talk
Paul,
about spiritual.
We'll end with that.
well, I'm a spiritual. When I met Paul, I had the name Nature Girl Rick at Flair, and he said Tornado because Dad would just wrestle, and he made wrestling fun, so you felt like you were strong. And but he was very strong and controlled in his wrestling. It was fun to wrestle.
Yeah.
And usually when we were wrestling is when we call friendly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And along that, we haven't talked about our Curtis Harlow experiences.
Curtis Harlow.
Yes.
Our cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of Dad's jobs we missed was he worked as helped his uncle that was a brick mason, Matt Carlo. And Matt Carlo had a son that had some troubles, and so our dad and Uncle Greg tried to step in and help him. And Curtis lived way out in Fluvanna, so he'd like to come to town. And it turns out that he'd like to roam around town rather than stay at our house or Uncle Greg's house. And so there's story after story about Curtis's escape plans. And his escape plan always had something to do with trying to get away from Dad, because Dad was like, I'm not going to let him go out and do who knows what in town. And he felt like he had a responsibility for him, and he wasn't an adult. So he's like, if you're coming to town, you're going to be here to be with me. You're not going to go run around and do whatever you want. And Erika was always one of his escape plans. He's like, I'm going to go talk to Erika. And then Dad was like, no, you're not. You're going to stay here right with me. So one time they were at Uncle Greg's house. Yeah, or you were at the house, and he wanted to come.
yeah.
Like they might have been at Greg's.
Mhm.
And so this is after many times of him coming. They were watching a basketball game, and the team he was going for wasn't doing well against Virginia. Grandpa and I love Virginia basketball and football. And so he said, I'm going to leave. And then my dad said, no, you're not. And so Curtis said, yes, I am. And so he took off and started running across some people's yards. And so Grandpa Knight took off after him. He was a big guy, but he could run.
Long legs.
Yes. And so he tackled Curtis in the middle of the yard. And then he said, well, you need to come back with me, Curtis. And so he came back, and I guess Curtis was so exhausted that night, he went and spent the night at our house, and he slept on the couch. And so he was asleep, and then
Oh
and then Tweedles grabbed him by the hair and picked it up and said, Floyd, is that you? And he's like, Tommy, I'm going to hurt you. Floyd, is that you? And so we heard this from Curtis's perspective. And Dad
a little
said that,
surprised anyway. So that just took it to a new level.
and then Dad told us that Floyd was a guy that was a drunk when Tweedles was growing up and he'd try to come and crash at people's houses. He'd get like stuck out in the middle of the mountains.
Story.
So he's a real person.
He's a real person.
Yes.
Boys,
Yes. And so there's Curtis was told that he wasn't allowed to come back at some point because I think Dad was concerned about him being infatuated with Erika.
Hey, Tommy, I want to tell something about the kids' names. I want you to come around. So, all three of us named kids after Dad. So, this is Tommy, and his primary teachers would call him Tommy. So, we picked that one for him. Erika?
My oldest son is Thomas Knight Ward, and he our company is Tom Knight Properties, and yeah, I already said Thomas is construction management like that.
And his initials were William Thomas Knight, and my son is Walker Thomas Knight, so it's WTK, the same as his grandfather. And Thomas, of course.
All right. Well, one thing, another question I had for you is just what would he consider his greatest accomplishments?
I think it's like no questions asked about his family. He's doing well.
Raising his kids.
Raising his kids. He always gave us time, even if he was looking at cars or
He would
getting
include
auto
us.
body parts. We came, and he would be sure to get us treats along the way and make it fun. But yeah, I remember, what's the auto parts store that was
Fisher's.
Fisher Auto Parts? I remember going there many times. So a lot of people may go without, and I know that he enjoyed going with Uncle Greg, but he enjoyed taking us places too. And he always wanted us to have what we wanted, and he would, he would make sure that we had what we wanted, and that he believed in us, and he believed in all his family members. He believed that Grandma Ruth could go to law school. And he supported. He wasn't a jealous individual of other people's accomplishments. He saw.
He was supportive.
He was supportive, and he wasn't embarrassed that maybe somebody made a different income or whatever it was. He was so proud to tell people that she was a lawyer.
Because there are things he wanted to do too.
Yes,
And he put it aside.
and because we talked about his childhood and how he didn't have as much as a lot of other people do. Like our kids have really a lot of resources and love. He didn't have that, but he did graduate from college. He graduated from BYU. He graduated from University of Virginia with a master's degree. And I just think it's remarkable that he was able to...
He didn't use any excuses.
He didn't use any excuses. That he was able to see a cheerful side of life and fiercely protect his family and fiercely believe in them. And we all felt that. We felt like we could do anything and that he supported. If we said we wanted to do something, he was supporting it. One year I wanted a dollhouse, and it was very difficult to put together. It had splintery pieces, seemed like 1,000 splintery pieces. But he stood by us and said, let's help you the best you can. And got the dollhouse and believed in what we wanted to believe in. He didn't say, do this because I want you to do it. He let us do what we wanted to do and supported us in it.
I think it was also, I would say, a great accomplishment that he had so many people come to his funeral. That's at least what I've heard. Is the funeral was
They couldn't
jam
even
packed.
fit everybody.
They could.
Like
There
over
must have been
1,000.
people there you had never even met or knew.
People
that
from
well.
all over
Yeah.
town.
Right.
Like, everybody knew him.
So
Yeah.
to me, that's an accomplishment.
Well, he cared. I mean, he cared about everybody.
Right.
And he found ways to help people, and even things like that we didn't know about. Like he didn't like show off about it, but you just would hear about it later. People would come and tell us
Just
stories.
quietly served.
Yeah, and
His primary
he taught
teacher
by
sang at his
example.
funeral.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who was his primary teacher?
Oh, I'm trying to remember who it was. But maybe that was at Trevor's funeral.
Tweedle's
actually.
funeral.
Yeah, it was. But he did have a wonderful funeral where Richard Mullins, talked about a ship, a sailing boat, and you can see it. You can see them when it sails, and when it goes over the horizon, you can't see anymore, but it's still traveling. And one funny story I want to tell that was told at his funeral is that when we lived in Virginia, we liked pork and beans. And he would make eating those really fun, so he would dump it out. We all had a fork ready to go, and whoever could get the fat back piece, that fatty piece, won. And we dig through and get that.
And he came from such rough circumstances that was the prime piece.
That was
of
the prime piece. So we had a lot of fun getting that fat cube.
He had a close relationship with his brother Greg too, didn't he?
All of his brothers.
Yeah.
Yes.
But really with Greg.
Yes.
We live by Greg. Greg
Lived
was
down
on our
the
street.
Yeah.
Well, when we lived in the country, Greg was on our street, and then when we moved into town,
Yep.
we're on the same street with Greg again.
Did you go camping and stuff like that with Greg? Or?
They went
Everything.
rowing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there was a time that we, Uncle Greg and our dad decided that we needed to do a boys camping trip. And so Uncle Greg had Alan and Sam, and I'm the only son that my dad had. And so we had 2 tents. And so Greg asked if he could borrow one. And my dad, when he went camping, he didn't want to sleep on the ground and have a rock in his back. So there goes the hide-to-bed mattress again. And so he packed that in the vehicle. And he had a 3-man tent and a 2-man tent. And so his hide-to-bed mattress did not fit the 2-man tent. So my dad and myself got the 3-man tent, and then Uncle Greg and Alan and Sam got the 2-man tent. And so it was some really hard rain.
Oh no.
And our Uncle Greg can get sort of theatrical, and he gets a little bit worked up. And so
What did he call the weather?
he said it was like a hurricane, but I don't remember that. I just remember there being hard rain. And Dad and I were laughing so hard because there was so much bickering. And then Alan and Sam would start fighting, and he'd start bickering at them for fighting. And he's like, "Don't touch that side of the tent." And we could hear this arguing. And he said, "Alan," I had him, Uncle Gregory, tell me the story recently. And he said, "Alan, you could have told him 100 times to touch it, and he wouldn't have because you wanted to do the opposite of what you wanted." So he said he touched that tent probably 25 times, and there were 25 leaks coming down. So the whole night there was like bickering, and Dad and I were like nice and cozy on this mattress in the middle of it. And
3 minutes.
Just listen
Yes.
to the entertainment.
yes. And so it was just sort of funny to hear that. And there was one other time we talked about how Willie Warfield was a little different. He lived in a trailer in Reading, Pennsylvania, and we got there late at night. It was another boy trip, and it was a night, and we knocked on the door, and Willie Warfield had a big table leg. We could see it, and he said, "Who is it?" And Uncle Greg decided to say, "I'm the boogeyman, and I'm here to get you." And so it took my dad like 30 minutes of talking through the door to convince him that it was us.
It was not the boogeyman.
Yeah, it was not the boogeyman there to get him. And then
Wait, who's Willie Warfield?
that's our grandfather,
That's your grandpa. Okay.
Grandpa Knight. This is Carrington Ann Knight, and she has Ann from Lucy Ann Pittman Knight Kirby.
Dad's side.
Knight
Yeah, and my
Pittman.
coco is Cordelia Lucy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a minute. Okay.
Oh, what's great.
So I want to make sure we got all the funny stories, but then I want to ask you to just tell the spiritual aspects.
Yeah, we'll do
which
that
we've
later.
touched on a little bit. So.
Yes. Okay, so when we got in the house, he wanted to show us how tough he was.
She did
Okay.
too.
Okay, so he started like punching the refrigerator and was putting rivets in it.
Oh,
and
man.
he jumped up on the chair and started punching the chair.
And what did he said?
Okay, Uncle Greg wanted to show off. And he took some karate at Ricks College, and so he put a kick in the air. And then Grandpa Willie Warfield went, "You're a jiu-jitsu man. No one can handle jiu-jitsu man." And then Grandpa Knight thought it would be amusing to say, "So how would you handle a jiu-jitsu man?" And then he picked up one of us and was like, "You got to pick him up like this and get him in the air." And so that was just a funny experience with.
That's hilarious.
The only funny story I can think of was sometimes Dad, it seems like he was in the kitchen or the living room or whatever, and I'd be all the way on the other side of the house in my bedroom. And if he would call me, he's like, "Erika!" And I was like,
No,
"Yeah."
he was not in the kitchen.
Where was he? In the living room?
Or downstairs.
Laying down.
Downstairs.
Sometimes he was in the kitchen.
No, he was not in the kitchen.
Sit down at the table.
You're doing a Peterson swing on the
Dining
story.
room? I don't know. He was like close to the fridge.
That was your perspective as a teenager.
And I came running, I'm like, "Dad," and he's like, "Why don't you go ahead and get you and me a glass of milk?" And I was like, "Dad, do not."
When he said you and me, you couldn't help but get him. You know, if he included the person, like you couldn't get
We're
it.
gonna have a glass of milk together.
Have it together.
I laid on the couch one time and said, "Can you go get you and me a glass of milk?" And he said, "Are your arms painted on?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another expression you had.
But we
Hands
did
painted
get a
on.
milk though.
That's right.
But I'm still a little odd that he was closer than I was.
One of my favorite pictures. So, when Dad passed away when he was in his 40s. One of my favorite pictures is Joseph wearing Dad's clothes because it reminds you what a big man Dad was. Joseph's this little guy, but he's got, I don't know. Dad wore big and tall. What size shoes? Just to give
15.
size 15. And Joseph had on his Levi's cinched up, and it's just cute to see.
Yeah, that's sweet. This is all play stories.
That's enough for
That's
Yeah,
good.
that's
That's a lot.
things.
All right. Well, you touched on this earlier, but if you have any more stories to tell about what spiritual lessons did he teach you? Or
This one's not extremely it's when he was a child, he had a lot of intuition and paid close attention to things. And I think that was part of his watching out for people, was that he would look at little things and pay attention to people's needs. And when we talked about his rough upbringing, and he was in school, he always told me that he had this teacher that was really rough. And he came from really rough circumstances and was not treated well. And every time we see a pink sky, he would tell me about when he was in elementary school, and he drew a picture that he thought he put a lot of effort into, and the sky was pink. And that teacher said, "Tommy, you know the sky's not pink. You need to start again." And so every time we see a pink sky, he'd say, "Look at this beautiful pink sky." And we would talk
We
about
still
that
do
teacher.
that.
I forgot her name, but
Yeah.
We still do that when there's a pink sky. Say, Grandpa Knight, there's this pink sky.
yes.
there is a pink sky, yeah.
And I think a lot of his spirituality was a lot of intuition and seeing what people's needs were, and being at one, and following the spirit on those things.
Yeah.
So
And
not just telling people you got to do that, but he went and did it.
yes,
He went
and
showed.
when Tweedles passed away, she had like a 1960s Plymouth.
This
And
is a week before he passed away, right?
yes, and so a week before he passed away, and he had refinished the car. He put new tires on it, new paint job, new
It's a beautiful,
upholstery.
beautiful car.
He did an engine job on it. He did a transmission job. And one of Tweedles' friends, Mary Cummings, had a car similar, but it was needed to go to the junkyard. And so he signed the car over to her.
And Mary Cummings didn't have a lot of money in her family, but every Sunday afterwards, she would make the most delicious biscuits that we would have ham and biscuits with, and thanks. And we always look forward to Sundays and her appreciation.
Yes.
They were on a plate full with saran wrap, and she brought them to church every Sunday. And we loved to heat them up with butter and jam.
He truly loved people. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
they
connected to
really
people.
loved people. We never wondered if we were loved.
Yeah.
No.
Any other stories? Or
I think that's pretty good.
Any spiritual stories?
That's spiritual stories. I mean, let me think. Just the spiritual values that he taught me was to make sure you care about people, love people unconditionally, help people. He taught me to enjoy life. That go where the love is. That is a spiritual thing to me. And not to be afraid to try hard things. Like I was with him when he was finishing our basement, and he had never laid tile before or done grout. And I watched him teach himself for the first time, and he was going as fast as he could because he was afraid the grout was going to dry. But he wasn't afraid to just try. He could fix anything to try to build things, fix things.
And I remember him putting the hardwood floors down for the Mary's house.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is spiritual, but Eleanor and I both are Sunday school teachers, and those are church callings that Dad had. I teach youth, she teaches gospel doctrine. Those are some of the main church callings that he really loved. And he taught me that always bring lots of candy in your scripture bag or your briefcase.
Dark.
Yeah, it's really dark.
Did the lights just turn off here?
I think it's getting darker
It's
outside.
just getting dark.
it's just getting darker.
These
Fix it,
are on.
post.
It's okay. So,
Please
so
sit tall.
I
We can
followed
adjust
his
it so it's
example.
lighter on there.
He's outside. Just leave the almost done.
And I'm always sure to go ahead and bring candy to Sunday school. That's spiritual in his church.
And I also would like to say that we can see Grandpa Knight coming through in the grandkids, and love of history, love of construction,
Make friends really easily.
making friends easily, being nurturing and kind. I'm thinking of Joseph.
Ride motorcycles like Thomas. Our Thomas never met his grandpa, but he loves the same things, and he loves his motorcycle.
So-
valuing the family.
And
Yeah.
yes, all our kids value the family, and I think I'd be safe to say that the best friends are not just best friends, but also family members, that they're tight bonds in the family. Just like we had good friends growing up, but our tightest bonds were within our family. You know,
Yes.
we really would just all load in the car and go places, and it might just be a joyride that Grandpa and I was taking us on to enjoy. And I also need to mention that he called wild goose chases if he was sent somewhere and didn't have good directions. I just thought that was funny. I've been sent on a wild goose chase.
Our mom was going to tell us about goose chases.
but these wonderful qualities have gone
Forgot
through to our kids.
Yep.
And they're not just named after him, but they also look like him and act a lot like him too. And that's a very hopeful thing for the future, to have more Tom Knight attributes going around.
Well, thanks a lot. I think a life well lived always impacts generations after that, and it's definitely the case with Grandpa Knight. He didn't live as long as he hoped or anybody hoped, but he, in that short life, made a great impact. So we'll close it up. And
Okay.
thanks for entertaining my request.
And we'd like to thank Uncle Ron for sending us out some questions to think about. It's really wonderful.
And Uncle Paul for the video.
And Uncle
Paul.
Paul for videoing.
And how's my family? Have a wonderful
He's got a wonderful family.
Oh yeah, amazing.